Hello and welcome to our July garden tour. So much has happened in the month of June leading up to July, one of which I am no longer pregnant because we had a little baby boy June 4th. And well, he was starting to grow and come out. Our garden has really been popping. We've been watering it around 1 to 2 times per day. There's been so much sun and the drought in our area is starting to finally end and we've had a lot more rain. So let's go into the garden, look and see what has changed, what has happened, and what we've harvested so far from June all the way to the beginning of July. Come on. First off, we have a lot of things happening with our grapevines. They finally started to actually grow up the fence, so we have a lot of things going on here. We also have our zinnias, which are now finally in bloom, and they're looking really great. So this bucket over here is doing awesome. And to the other side, this bed is definitely coming along a little bit slower. These are our newer grapes, so they're still going. Those ones are last year's. So these are just 1 year old in this bucket and they're a little bit slower, but they're coming along. This is our cuttings table, and as you can see, it's a lot more sparse as it was last month, and this is for 2 different reasons. One, we do have all of our cuttings in order to give out to family, friends, and neighbors, which we've definitely been spreading the love of our garden with all of those. We also started our own farm stand where we've been selling starter plants, and we're also going to be selling some fruit, veggies, wood, as well as other items from our farm, eggs. So we'll definitely be doing a video on the success of that, the creation of that, and details on how we made that. So you'll definitely want to subscribe to our channel if that's something that interests you. And we are doing some more starters here, as well as using these for successional planting within our garden so that we can keep the garden going and growing. And you'll see that we have some starters that we've planted throughout, which I'll talk a little bit about. Another addition to this table that we added is actually a bottle of bleach. And I know it sounds really weird, why do we have bleach in our garden? But we have this because when you are doing cuttings from your garden and you're using scissors to cut, you want to make sure that you're using a sterilized scissor, and we're using bleach in order to do that so that no diseases or items are passed from plant to plant. So definitely something that you might want to think about adding to your garden, especially if you are doing cuttings in order to grow some additional plants or just clean up the ones that you have. And we'll talk about a few reasons why you might want to be cutting from your plants as we tour the garden. But next up, we're going to go into some of our boxes and talk a little bit about what's been going on there, some of the growth, some of the harvesting that we've had the past month, and some changes that we've made. So come on. Okay, this is probably one of my favorite boxes right now. This is our tomato and basil box. So I'm really excited. We have some buds from our tomatoes. All of them are in tomato cages. As they grow, those will just help the structure of the tomato because we are training them to grow up. And we do also have basil in here, so I'm really excited to pick some of this basil and then pair it with some tomatoes once they come in, because I know we're going to have a lot of tomatoes. We've also been baking a lot of pesto with our basil, so I'll include the recipe down below that we've been using, but we have not even made a dent in this basil and we've made so much pesto already and it's been delicious. Really excited about all of that. Something else that we have been doing in our basil is actually taking some of the top clippings on this. So we have been clipping from the basil. So something to think about when you are growing basil is its main goal is in order to flower and actually go to seed. That's the goal of basil, so that it can keep on propagating itself and keep on growing and going to seed and having more children basil. Now that's going to be the goal of a lot of your plants here, is to be able to go to seed and have babies of them. But something that you can do is actually cut at the node of the basil so that you will remove the top seedlings from forming, and this is going to make sure that your basil keeps on growing and growing and doesn't actually go to seed, because that is when it would stop growing. Something else that we've noticed a lot in our garden is we've actually been getting some beetles, so we've been making sure to kill them, like this one right here. in order to make sure that they do not come into our garden. There are definitely some bad bugs and good bugs in your garden. We're gonna talk a little bit about that in a future video. So we will definitely talk about that, but you wanna make sure to eradicate any of those bad buggies. And we also have some combinations of plants in these gardens to help with that as well. These 4 boxes, we have made some changes to. These 2 side boxes right here, I'm doing my flight attendant arms, are actually changed up. Last video, we did talk about how these were cauliflower, and we had really fruitful purple and white cauliflower in these beds. We had around 4 heads that weighed anywhere from around 4 to 4.5 pounds each. So we had a lot of cauliflower and it was really delicious. We've now actually pulled the cauliflower up because their season is over, and we planted in some sweet potatoes. So you can see those forming here. The reason that we put the sweet potatoes in these 2 front beds is because sweet potatoes are going to overflow with leaves. And this way, when you come walk into the garden, it's going to be pouring out with beautiful, colorful leaves from these potatoes that we're really excited to have start coming up. So that's going to be in here, and when we're ready to harvest them, they will just be, they're more of like a root vegetable, so you'll dig into that. What also is really nice about having them in these raised garden beds is this is all dirt throughout here, so there's going to be nothing that's going to actually inhibit their growth. If you are doing anything in the ground that has rocks or big logs, because we do use hugelkultur gardening in some of our other beds, then there would be logs that would inhibit their growth. So here we actually are able to have more control over that. And in the beds behind us, we do actually have baby's breath. So these are all starting to bloom. This bed is definitely looking a lot better than this one, but this one will also start to bloom as well. And we also have a random summer squash at the end here. On this bed, we got as a starter plant from a friend. So we are growing that out over here, and hopefully that comes in soon. And we're gonna head over to our tomatillo garden where we did make some changes. So let's go over there next. This is our 16-foot bed where we have an abundant amount of tomatillos, and my husband loves making fresh salsa. So this year we're actually testing out a few different tomatillos. So we have different varieties in this bed, and these have been really doing well this year. They're just popping off. There's so many buds, so I know there's gonna be just a enormous amount of tomatillos coming in very soon. Something that we did change from June to now is we did actually clean up this garden bed just a bit. We did have tomatoes and tomatillos at one point in here. We also had some basil in here, and we have moved out the tomatoes and basil so that it doesn't inhibit the growth of our tomatillos. And as you can see, these tomatillos have been growing very successfully, so that has been really good. And we've just moved those into either planters or just along our garden next to beds, in the ground, different sections of our garden bed. Something else that we've done here is we have 2 styles that are helping the growth of the tomatillo. So we have these cages over here, and then we also have string in order to help keep the tomatillos standing up straight. Our preferred method is definitely going to be the cages. They just didn't have any good ones at Home Depot, Lowe's when we went to go check them out, so we did use some string in order to help keep the plants going. And then next year, or when we go back to the store, if they do have additional cages, we'll invest in some more over here, but we just didn't want to get some of those rusty old ones. Let's move along to our other large 16-foot beds, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the things growing over there. This bed is our pepper bed. So we have a few different varieties of peppers along this bed. We have some spicier versions, and then we also have my favorite, which are the bell peppers. We have some Sorrento peppers to help make some of that salsa. And then we also just have an abundant different variety. On the inside of these beds, we have some fresh curly kale growing. And something to think about when you're growing kale is you can always pick from the outside of the kale, pick your leaves. Once they're about the size of your hand or larger, you can start to pick these. And you want to make sure that you're leaving the inside of your kale not picked. This is where the new kale is actually going to come from. This is very similar with a lot of leafy greens. So picking from the outside is going to make sure that you are getting the vegetables that you want while not inhibiting the growth of your leafy greens. So this way you can keep it growing. And then what we like to do is actually just strip the kale off, feed this to our chickens, and then you can either saute this up or you can even freeze it, put it in smoothies, make some kale chips. There's a lot of different things that you can do with kale. Obviously, those are not the only options, but some of our favorite, and this kale is definitely one of our favorite ones to try, and it's been going so well. This bed is primarily just peppers. We do not have any kale in here, but we have a lot of different varieties. These are all from seed. We put these in a little bit after that bed, so they are a little bit slower growing. Something that we did do here to help with the growth was if we saw buds early on, we did clip them, and this made sure that there was a lot more energy going into the actual growth of the pepper. And now that they are a little bit larger, we have stopped clipping them, and now it will focus more energy on fruiting out instead of just the growth of the pepper. Another thing to think about when you are clipping your peppers is there's definitely different types. Longer peppers you don't want to be touching the ground because this could make them moldy or just have bad growth. So those ones you want to make sure do grow long and tall. Any of your shorter, smaller peppers, you might want it to get more bushy, so you can just top those, and that way it will focus more growth into the bushing out of the pepper and less growth into growing the height of the pepper. Our next bed is our watermelon bed, so let's go head over that way. So we have one stray tomatillo in here, not really sure what's going on here. We did pluck some of our tomatoes and we put them right next to the bed over here so that our watermelons can really grow out, and these have expanded exponentially. As you can see, they're starting to pour out of the beds, and we actually took this, and because they're pouring out, we do know that we don't want to be just wasting a lot of space on our walkways. So on the outer edges of our garden, we did start to plant some pumpkins for fall, as well as some cantaloupe. Something else that we did, if you look at our chicken coop area, is we have actually gone ahead and planted in a netted in section of both pumpkins and cantaloupe so that we can keep using some of that ground space in order to grow more, and then the chickens can enjoy it once the fruit has been picked. This bed has also changed a lot. Before we had spinach over here. Spinach is actually over now, so we went ahead, pulled all of that out. We made a lot of yummy spinach sides for our dinners, and we've gone ahead and planted in some cantaloupe now. Because the warmer months are going to be really great for growing cantaloupe and watermelons, we've added that in here. And then our leafy greens, we are going to be pulling a lot more of that, doing some preserving very shortly. So right now this is just very bushy and lush. We do have a few 4th of July parties this weekend, so I want to make some really delicious salads with some of these greens. So I have them growing in here now, but I'm going to be picking them probably tomorrow in order to make some really lush, beautiful salads using these greens as well. This is our tomato and tomatillo forest box. So this is an 8x8 box, the same as our leafy green box. This is doing really great. We have a lot of heights and just flourishing veggies in here. Really excited to start picking some of these once they do start to fruit. In the center, we also have some marigolds, and these are really great for warding off bad bugs and animals from your garden in order to help eliminate them. So definitely a great flowering plant to have. We also love it because this box is really large, hard to get to the center. So this way you aren't really like reaching over, destroying plants as you're getting to it, because you just have a nice flowering bush in the center. So that's what we've been doing in this really large 8x8 box. We also had that in our lettuce garden as well, our leafy green garden bed. So we're just trying to utilize the space and ward off those bad buggies. Behind me, we have our snap pea and beans garden bed. Snap peas are ending their season. This year we want to be collecting a lot of their seeds, so we are letting a lot of the larger pea pods go ahead and dry out so we can start collecting those, and you want to make sure that they are drying out on the stalk so that you're able to really get those seeds from them. We also have a lot of string beans in that garden bed that we've been able to cook multiple dinners with. We probably have done a couple pounds of that already, and we've had a lot of great success there. Here is our asparagus. asparagus bed. Again, all of these have kind of grown out. We are just letting them grow a little bit. You definitely don't want to cut these down. You want to let them just keep growing, and then you can kind of fold them in once they've started to dry out, and it will just keep moving and grooving. Asparagus will come back for around 40 years, and you usually don't want to pick them until they've been in the ground for a few years. So we did actually buy some bare root asparagus that were 2 and 3 years old. We've also seeded in brand new asparagus. This is always going to be our asparagus bed, same with the one behind here. We also have some potatoes growing in there, just white potatoes, that are doing really, really well right now. But something that we've done in both of these beds is, since last time, was just add some additional soil. This just makes sure that their roots are not super close to the top of the soil and gives them a little bit more room for those rooting. Let's talk a little bit about these two beds over here. So this is our strawberry bed. We did have a netting over it to keep all of the birds out. I'd say we've gotten around 5 to 7 pounds of strawberries just from this one 8-foot by 4-foot bed right here. And this is our second year on this strawberry patch. Definitely having the netting helped because we were able to get a lot more strawberries than we did last year. The birds did not have time or ability to get to them, but it still allowed the bees and pollinators in to pollinate everything. And now this bed is going to be done for the season. The strawberries are over. So we did remove that, and we'll let that kind of just do its own thing. Over here is our eggplant section. So these eggplants on this side have been doing really well. They already have some buds, and eggplants are starting to get ready in there. Whereas this side's not doing as well. We're hoping that it improves. It might be just an imbalance in the soil. So something that we're looking to kind of figure out and hopefully amend. Behind me right here is our squash garden bed. And this bed, oh my, if you look at it last month to this month, it's astronomically different. We do also have some corn growing in here as well. Because corn is going to kind of shoot up in the center, it's going to be much larger and higher up. It's not going to impede the growth of the squash going on in here. Something that we did do in the month of June to this squash as it started to grow, which we have a variety of zucchini and a yellow summer squash in here. Something that we did do is we have cut back some of the larger leaves on these. This way, it's not going to get too moldy and the sun's able to go in. So we don't want the moisture to get stuck underneath there, because that's going to make it so that the fruit of the plant is not really growing and getting to its full size, and it could also get moldy as well. So we don't really want to inhibit that growth or destroy any of the fruit coming out of here. So we're just kind of cleaning that up, making sure that the sun and the moisture is removed from that. Something else that we've been doing as well here is actually helping pollinate. So there is a male and a female within each one of these, and you can help the process by self-pollinating this as well. So definitely something that you might want to look into, and we're gonna kind of talk a little bit about that in a future video. So stay tuned for that as well. This is our bean garden over here. So these are all string beans. These were planted a little bit later than our other string beans. So I foresee pounds and pounds of string beans in this garden bed. So something else that we've done here is we have a few companion plants. We have our string beans, we have some potatoes, because those are going to be mostly a root vegetable, so they're going to grow down and below everything. And then we also have corn, because that's going to grow nice and tall. And what's really cool here is the beans can actually climb up along the corn once it does start growing, and the potatoes are going to be nice and leafy, so they'll create some nice ground coverage in order to shade the dirt, locking in the nutrients for it. So really great companion plants to have in one garden box. And you can also take advantage of a lot more floor space, ground space, growing these three together. In the back here, we have two 16-foot beds, which are quite a large, 16 by 4 foot. So there's a lot of space. This isn't even like half the bed. But we've done some fun things along here. So on each side of the bed, we did some carrots. Something that we did from last time to this time is we actually cleaned up some of the carrots. So we overseeded at the beginning of the year. And then what we've done is just pulled out some of the weaker ones. We've relocated some of them, which you can actually move them with chopsticks if you want to. That's a nice way to actually do that. And they're doing pretty good, definitely. But overseeding and then pulling from them does actually help because you're able to really weed out some of the smaller ones and get in some of those nice lush carrots. So we have those along the two sides here. This is some sunflowers. So they've grown really, really tall. You can see they're almost at my height. Obviously they're not starting at the ground, but they do have some nice height here. And then intertwined in between them, we have some beans on this side of the bed. And then we also have some summer squash and zucchini in the center, which will do a nice crawling on the ground. These were planted a little bit later, so they're obviously not as large as the other full squash bed, but they're hopefully going to be pretty good. Our final bed over here is our cucumber and carrot bed. So again, we have carrots along the side here. This one we haven't actually cleaned up that much, these carrots. So they're a little bit overgrown in this section. We didn't actually pull those out as much. And then we have our pickling cucumbers and our muncher cucumbers. They've not really been doing as successful as we've wanted this year. We did change up the location of them. So I think this spot is just not as good as we had them in last year, which is interesting because we had a lot of great success in this bed last year. So we're really hoping that the cucumbers continue to grow and flourish and we get a lot of them because we love cucumbers and pickles, but we're kind of watching this box right here. Still a lot more growth to go. And then we also have potatoes growing in here as well. Same with the other 16-foot bed that we just talked about. And then on the side of our garden, we're definitely taking advantage of a lot more space. As I said, we have some pumpkins, cantaloupe, which are going to be crawling along the ground, and we don't really need that walking space back there. We also have some blackberries and raspberry bushes along the edges, as well as some nice beautiful pollinators, some butterfly bushes that we got last year, and we're just kind of seeing how they're going. That is really it for our garden tour. There's been a lot of great success already this year. We've gotten a couple pounds of beans, strawberries, snap peas, and we have so much more coming. This is definitely the busiest time in the garden. Lots of things going on, lots of things coming out soon. So you'll definitely want to stay tuned to August and see what's really happening in our garden because so much more is going to be peeking out. And I can't wait to show you at the end of the season how much this garden has actually given us in food, how much we're able to preserve until next year, and really what you could do in a space this size. That's it for our July garden tour. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you guys next month. Bye.